Hello, my name is Luc Sala, and today we bring you the world. We bring you black and white. We bring you the West and the East. We bring you opposition, dialogue, and we hope you and we are going to learn something from it. Two people who look different from the people you see in the street, two people with a different view of the world, but both with deep roots in the Hindu tradition. Baaba is from America, but from Maasai descent and adhering to that culture. Suhotra Swami is from America, but from the Hare Krishna movement. Both share views, both have opposing views. We're going to try to help you understand what the differences are and learn from it.
First? No, this one.
Just say I am.
All right. Yes. My name is Suhotra Swami, and I'm a sannyasi. That means a renounced monk, you might say, but with the portfolio of traveling, not living in a monastery. And my school, or sampradaya, is technically called the Gaudiya, which is a Sanskrit word referring to Eastern India, Bengal, Gaudadesh. The Gaudiya Vaishnava. Vaishnava means worshipper of Vishnu, sampradaya, school. So this Gaudiya Vaishnava sampradaya is rooted in a very, very ancient tradition that was revived 500 years ago. The roots go back thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. But 500 years ago, it was revived in India by a great personality named Chaitanya. Chaitanya began the movement known as the Sankirtan movement. Sankirtan means the congregational chanting of the names of God. And so in Bengal, in Gaudadesh, the Vaishnavas gather not only in their temples, but in the streets and public places with drums called mridanga, two-headed drums, hand cymbals called kartels, and they chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In fact, just before I came here to the studio, I was doing that with our brothers and sisters from the Amsterdam temple here. We were downtown chanting this Maha Mantra. And so this mantra affords anyone and everyone, it doesn't matter the cultural background, it doesn't matter the racial background, it doesn't matter the religious background, but it affords a direct experience of our eternal relationship with the Supreme Being, whom we understand is the most attractive, the all-attractive being. Therefore, he is known as Krishna, because that is what Krishna means, all-attractive. Of course, Krishna has many other meanings too. Now, that doesn't mean, please don't misunderstand me, that Krishna is the only name of God, because God is an unlimited person, so he has unlimited names. In fact, the Vedanta Sutra tells us that ultimately all words in any language is a name of God, because any word has potency to create meaning, understanding in consciousness, and that is only possible by God's grace. God lives within the heart of everyone, and it is only by his presence that we can understand anything in any language. But there are certain vibrations, there are certain words which have complete potency. There are some which have partial potency, but there are those which have complete potency. They're called mantras. Mantra from the Sanskrit manas and trayate, which means to deliver the consciousness. It delivers the consciousness from illusion. So the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is one such mantra. There are many, many. God has unlimited names with the potency to deliver our consciousness from illusion. But in our school, we understand that in this particular age, this particular time, which is called Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel. Kali is a different word from Kali. I understand that His Grace, Baaba, was in India worshipper of Kali, but that's different. Kali means quarrel. So this is the age of quarrel, confusion, opposition, division. So in this age, all other former processes of Dharma which were prominent, like ritualistic sacrifices, as were performed in many ancient cultures, Egypt and Mesopotamia as well as India, or severely austere yoga practice, or even elaborate temple worship. In this age, it's not that these are wrong, but they lose their potency because the people are too frivolous in mind. But if we can come together and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, even if it's only for a few moments in one's life, the spiritual effect is overwhelming. And look here, who presides over the studio, he was just downtown. He was telling me earlier how he saw the energy coming out and the people spontaneously turning away from whatever they were doing, looking in shop windows or whatever, and they were actually getting very ecstatic and chanting Hare Krishna. So, in brief, just a brief statement that encapsulates what I represent here. So thank you.
My name is Odoinyo Laetoli Baaba. I am from Maasai descent. Maasai is a tribe that resides in East Africa, Kenya, Tanzania. I was born in America, in Los Angeles. But on realizing my heritage, then in going back to Africa, I reclaimed this heritage. And from that moment, began to grow, began to learn according to the traditions and the customs of my tribal heritage. As a result of that, I began to see the need to be one with the earth and with all living beings. This inevitably led me to India as well. In India, I became very much aware of the religious traditions there, the practices, and as a result of that, became very strongly related to the tantric philosophy and the tantric practices of India, that being the worship of Mother Kali, the feminine aspect of the universe. In understanding the interconnectedness of India and Africa, I have grown and realized that all indigenous people on the planet share one common realization. And that realization is their inherent connectedness, their inherent dependentness, and their inherent oneness with all living things. Now, this goes beyond what Western philosophy calls animate and inanimate. We believe that the inanimate and the animate are both living, and therefore there is nothing or no one that is outside of the scope of sacredness or outside of the scope of being identified as God or Goddess, as divine or as special. So this way of understanding, this way of learning through many religions that I have practiced and many religions that I have come to understand, including Islam, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, and various other ways of understanding the one truth, have led me to the point of my path being pathless, my realization being oneness, And so I don't see a separation because I don't believe in duality. The reality is one. We have been educated and taught to believe in an empirical reality. That is to say that we perceive reality according to this being this or that being that, and the two being separate. This allows us to believe in duality. This allows us to believe in individuality. My perception is that that is an illusion and that the reality is one. It may be diverse, but it is one. And so with this, I bring the ancient message of the spirit of my ancestors, that the world may learn to heal by healing each of us within the self and a realization of our true self. This is what I bring.
So, I guess I'm...
Okay, let's take a subject, the traditions you come from. Do you see a difference? Do you see a similarity in the traditions you come from, or you adhere to?
Yes. I was listening carefully, and now our tradition, because he was stressing oneness, but also saying there's diversity. So in our tradition, I don't know if, not having heard a more elaborate explanation, so I don't know if this is the same or different. But in our tradition, the philosophy is called Achincha Beda, Abeda Tattva, which means that everything is simultaneously and inconceivably one and different. And if I may just give, this is a simple example. I don't pretend that it completely summarizes the philosophy, but just to try to give a fix on what I mean, I can give an example that is common when you go to college or school and take a psychology class. Very often you find in the textbooks there's a diagram which shows two silhouettes, human faces from the side. And they are maybe black, or they may be blank white, and then the space in between where their noses almost touch, that's the opposite. That'll be white or black. So you see these two silhouettes, and you see the space in between. Now, the mind, because this is the point of the test, the mind cannot grasp the totality. That's why this philosophy says achincha. It means it is inconceivable. The mind cannot grasp the totality of this picture. It will see either two faces or a vase or a goblet or something, the space in between. And the mind shifts back and forth between faces and vase, faces and vase. So this is the meaning of achincha. The simultaneous oneness and difference is not something that can ultimately be grasped nor explained philosophically in terms of words and intellectual, moving the intellectual furniture around in the head. But it is something that has to be experienced directly on a higher platform of consciousness. And I wrote a book called Transcendental Personalism, which is about this. Because he has mentioned animism. So we have perhaps it is a parallel concept, that everything is personal. That everything, even what we call inanimate matter, is a manifestation of a higher dimensional personality. And there are many, many levels. So you have, in the Vedas, many, many different classifications of personalities described. Going up in this universe, he mentioned Kali Ma. Yes, and she is in fact the feminine aspect of the cosmic totality. And on the other side, there's the masculine aspect, Shiva. So that is within this universe. Of course, the knowledge that we have even goes beyond the universe to a transcendental sphere of pure spirit, Brahman, which is non-dual, and yet within this non-dual absolute Satchit Ananda, there is also variety. Why is there variety? The variety is not for disagreement, not for egotistical positioning. The variety is only there for what is termed in the Taittiriya Upanishad rasa. Rasa means a taste of nectar. The Sanskrit says raso vaisaha, referring to God. He is rasa. That means he is the sweet taste of transcendental variety. And rasam hi avayam lubdhavananda, which means one who has attained this rasa, then he knows what is bliss. He knows what is happiness. So, yes, everything is personal, and the ultimate understanding of personality, it culminates in this rasa, in this divine taste of transcendental love. And so, when that is attained, then Vishvapurna Sukhayate, it is stated the whole universe is perceived as overflooded with sukha. Sukha means happiness or bliss. The perception right now of this universe, if I may just wind up with a little example. It's like I may show you a bowl of powder and ask, what color is this? And one will reply, well, it is gray. But actually, if in the bowl was mixed equally a white powder and a black powder, if you examine that under a microscope, you'll still see the white grains and the black grains. You won't find any gray at all. So the gray is a product of our own perception. This is called Maya. It actually does not exist except in our own perception. The thing, Kants, Ding an sich, the thing in itself is something else altogether. So we perceive this world in one way as a place of birth and death, of strife, of quarrel, of division, social division, racial division, economic division, hot and cold war, all of these things. But from the Vedic perspective, that is like looking at this mixture of white and black powder and saying it is gray. It is just a perception of our own senses. That's not to say that it's totally unreal. Because if you're locked in that platform of seeing everything gray, then you have to deal with it. That's a fact. But the Vedas give us a philosophy by which ultimately one can be detached from this whole show by realizing, hey, ultimately it is not real, and there is something beyond.
There's very little here that we can disagree on. The only point that might be looked upon is that when we read Vedas, or when we refer to Vedas, then the word Veda meaning knowledge, from vidya, meaning to know, then we see that there is no point of origin for that. Yet we see that there is, in Indian culture, scripture and doctrine and various traditions based upon this teaching. And this teaching is saying that it is the origin. Yet we find that there is an ultimate reality that goes beyond the knowing. It goes beyond the capacity to have knowledge. It is just a matter of realizing. It is a matter of being in touch with the ultimate reality, which transcends the capacity to know or to perceive in any physical or material form. So, with that, we go from a traditional way of thinking according to indigenous people. We go beyond any scripture, we go beyond any concept of God per se, and we go beyond any realization that might be called spiritual realization, and we understand that it is material realization, not separate from spiritual realization, that is the reality of the universe and the reality of that which may even be called transcendental universe, because it's transcending what? Nothing. And if the essence is nothing, then the reality of no thing becoming something must become material. to order to be perceived as spiritual. And so this is where we may have some difference here, but the differences are minor.
But your concept of ultimate reality, is that the same as the concept of God?
Well, of course, God is a very general word. And according to one's religious background, it brings to mind various concepts which may seem to conflict. But as I was explaining earlier, we take the definition. Of course, this is a literal verbal definition, but it's pointing in the direction that God is, that which we call God is rasa. And rasa means the fulfillment of all desire, or the supreme taste, the supreme bliss. And within this experience of bliss, there is variety, because the nature of this rasa is one of love. So it is a variety, yet it is not dualistic. Dualistic meaning in opposition. There can be a difference that divides us, but there is a difference, just like between a man and a woman. There is also a difference, but that difference is generally understood to form a kind of harmonious whole, a oneness. And out of that oneness there is enjoyment, there is pleasure, there is happiness, there is love. So there is oneness there, and yet there is variety. So this is how we view what we call God.
If I throw in time there, and see God not only as the bliss in the moment without time, but go to the origin of things.
Mm-hmm.
Is he the beginning of everything, or is there stages in the creation?
I would take more time than we have to adequately answer that, because as I spoke of, my tradition comes from my tribal heritage of Maasai. I would be speaking from that tradition. Also, my Indian traditional background would have another way of speaking, and as well as all indigenous people that I have spent time with, that has given me understandings of life and reality of God. To answer you directly would be to say that God is for us beyond perceivable reality. It's beyond time, it's beyond place, it's beyond space. This is why in every language, in every religion, it is very important to understand the language that propagates that religion. The word God in English is not the same as Brahm or Brahman in Sanskrit. That becomes Ishvara, which is the God or the aspect of creator, preserver, and destroyer. This Ishvara is not the same as Brahm or Brahman, because the Brahm or Brahman is absolute. It's not relative. And it has no name. In Sanskrit, it's called neti, neti, eti, eti. Not this and not that, but yet not this and not that. And it is said, tattvam aste, thou art that. So what that's saying is that our essence goes beyond perceivable reality. Our essence goes beyond knowable reality. However, in every tradition, for us to be able to apply the realities of spiritual teachings, the realities of dharmic or religious teachings, we formulate a perceivable reality, or we make a form out of this abstract reality, which we call God, which comes from the German root gut, which means person, place, or thing of praise or worship, which is a noun. If the absolute is that which has no origin and has no ending, then it cannot be a noun, which is a relative reality. So this is where we must go from the esoteric, back to the exoteric in order to understand the esoteric. And this is why tantric teachings in the Vedic or pre-Vedic traditions of India are so very important, because in tantric doctrine, we understand that even though the word Veda or Vidya means knowledge, which has always been, the formalized doctrines based upon Veda are not preceding, in actuality, they follow the tantric doctrines, which were not written but were realized long before. In fact, there is no origin to them. They always have been.
Could you specify what you mean then by tantric?
Tantra, the word tantra is a composite word, and it literally means, in loose translation, equilibrium. There is no equality. There is only equilibrium. That equilibrium says that there is balance. Everything is balanced. In other words, they're ultimately speaking, not relatively, but ultimately speaking, there is no difference between good and bad, right or wrong, hot or cold, night or day, ultimately speaking. However, relatively speaking, the difference is obvious. So Tantra takes it out of the relative context into an abstract, absolute context. Now, the problem is trying to apply this or live by this, and this is when the person has to be what is called in India an enlightened person, or twice-born person, to realize this.
Both your reality differs from the normal world, in the
Yes.
sense that you look different, you act different, and apart from this thing about Maya and the world being an illusion and good and bad being the same, both of you try to live the good life in a specific way. So Suhotra, why did you choose for that?
Well, it's funny. I was in New York about a week ago, and I was walking down the street with a few of my brothers and sisters in this order, and one fellow happened by, and he made some comment. I mean, it wasn't unfriendly, but it was a little, perhaps, supposed to be funny. He made some comment about the way we were dressed, and he asked, "Are you dressed like that just to look different from everyone else?" And so I just paused and said to him, "Well, my sir, that this is a very relative statement. I mean, about 2,000 years ago, in any city of that time, this dress would be considered quite normal." Any city in the world 2,000 years ago, this would be, standard apparel. Oh. Sorry about that. We'll continue. So there is, in one sense, you can say, yeah, it is just a style, it's a fashion, and many parts of the world it is passé now. And therefore we do say, Krishna consciousness depends on consciousness, not on your dress. That we will say. But then the question remains, well, why do you dress like this then? And the answer is that every aspect of this culture that we follow, it makes its contribution to the ultimate goal, even the dress. For instance, let me just give an example, a doctor. A doctor also wears a standard apparel, a white smock. And one thing it does is that you can see if there's an emergency in a crowd, you see, here's a doctor when he comes, when the ambulance drives up and the paramedics get out, everybody stands out of the way. So that's one contribution. Another thing is very simple, it's very clean. So that is there even in how a modern doctor dresses. So similarly, this is simple. We're not worried about changing our wardrobe because now the fall fashions are starting and we have to be hip, we have to be with it. That doesn't disturb our minds at all. And it is very simple, it is very clean. And ultimately, you can ask yourself, why is it 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, the Indians, the Mesopotamians, the Egyptians, the Africans, the Greeks, the Phoenicians, all of these ancient cultures, why did they more or less wear a dhoti or a toga or whatever you want to call it? And Yeah, this is something ordained. This is something considered to be sacred, to be holy, to be helpful to raising the consciousness. And that's why we dress like that.
This is very true. Thank you. There is scientific reason also for this. At one time, there was no need to wear any clothing. And this is because our consciousness was such in a state of harmony with the environment and with the ecology. But as we begin to wear clothing, as my brother has spoken, different cultures had very similar ways of dressing. There's a science to this. And the science has to do with the energies. There's the energy that fluctuates and radiates through and around the body. When one wears clothing and the clothing envelops the body, then this energy resonates back and forth without any interruption. For example, the dhoti that the Indian wears. It envelops the energy that resonates from the root chakra or the groin area of the body, and it radiates down the legs to the sole of the feet and back to the groin area, and from the groin area it radiates to the crown of the head. This creates an electromagnetic field which we know today as aura. A lot of talk is about this auric field. Well, this auric field resonates and vibrates in a cylinder shape. It resonates in like an oval cycle of energy. And when we wear certain clothing, that cycle of energy is enhanced and not interrupted, versus wearing pants, which interrupts that, you see. And so for this reason, the dhotis are worn, the togas are worn, and in every culture, every ancient culture, you find this same science that is applied. Now, the people may not always know or have always understood this science because many of us are scholars and many of us are not. So we don't all understand the science of this, but the science is there to be known. Now, the colors also have an effect. You see, every color has a vibration to it. Every color has a vibratory rate that creates sound and creates a certain feeling, a certain presence. For us, the red is the blood. The black is the space. In India, it's called the akasha, or the abstract void space from which all has emanated, all has come. Also in physics, you'll find this, and in biology, you'll find it's called melanin. And melanin is that primordial spot, that primordial dot, or bindu it may be called, or bindi, where all existence has come and emanated from. This is black. It is the light that is the darkness. But the light is so concentrated until it's imperceivable, and therefore it appears to be dark. And so when we wear the black, we're in touch with all that has ever been, is, and shall ever be from a spiritual as well as material plane. As that manifests or emanates forth onto a perceivable plane, a perceivable and knowable reality, then blood becomes the vehicle for that. And so for that reason, the red and the black is very sacred for us. Even the pink or the orange has red in it, you see, and it has white in it. The white is the purity. The black is the purity. The red is the purity. And interestingly enough, in India, these are the three colors that represent the three goddesses: the Virgin, the Mother, and the Crone, which are the three stages of life: the birth, the living process, and that which we call death, which is ending the cycle of the continuous cycle of life called birth and death. So these colors all have significance scientifically, philosophically, and religiously.
For both of you goes that your dress is an invitation for people to approach you and say, brother, father, Baaba, whatever, why are you like this? You welcome that?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Because the opportunity is there. The obstacle presents the opportunity, you see, because we have something to share. And that which we have to share is that which has always been. We don't know anything or realize anything that most people don't. The difference is that we remember, and in that remembering, we become a mirror. We become a reflector. We may do it differently. We may do it with different perceptions about different things, but that's not important. What's important is that we are making change. We are presenting the possibility for change and transition. And that change is change from the ways of thinking that has caused so much problem and so much suffering in the world. We present a mirror that there is a way to get out of this cycle of suffering.
But on the other hand, you're not hip, you don't wear Dr. Adam's shoes, you don't go with the times, you sing with your voice, there is no electronics around. You're just age-old guys. You come with a message that is, for the people in the street, long forgotten,
Yes.
useless. How can you fit in this modern world, and how can your message fit in this world, Suhotra?
Yes. Well, before you started filming, we were having a little discussion just on this point. And what came to my mind is that, as you have described, modern culture, this materialistic culture, is very technically or mechanistically oriented. That's a fact. Everything is done with machines. Now even the music, even the drums, it's a computer. And but from the perspective of our tradition, you see, what is mechanical is ultimately that which binds, that which is bondage. Just like the mechanics of this body. The body can be understood in different ways. There is a higher science where we see this body as a manifestation of prana, of energy, cosmic energy, God's own breath. So from that perspective, then the body is a divine vehicle. But on a platform of lower consciousness, there's the mechanics, the joints of the bones and all this. And that is a symbol of our very bondage. And so this very lowest level of consciousness has been multiplied by modern technology. They've expanded this mechanism because they don't know any higher way of doing things. I was not long ago in Bolivia. I was visiting a site called Tiahuanaco, which is an ancient city. They're not sure how old it is. Some say as old as 10,000 BC. And the walls of this city are blocks of stone, each one weighing hundreds of tons. And modern scientists, I was just there speaking with a scientist, an anthropologist, and I was asking him about, do you have an explanation how people of thousands of years ago could have constructed a city of solid stone blocks, each one weighing hundreds and hundreds of tons, at an altitude of it's more than 8,000 meters high. You can't run a bulldozer. You can't run a crane because there's not enough oxygen to ignite the internal combustion motor. So, and he said, well, this is a big mystery because we can't even find any tools. We can't even find, because at old sites they'll find a place where tools, after they built them, they deposited this. We can't even find any tools. So there is this huge structure, which the scientists say was once covered with gold, the whole thing, covered with gold. Then later, looters, they stripped all the gold off it. So what's left, these gigantic blocks, hundreds and hundreds, and they're fit together. He said the precision cannot be duplicated by modern technology. You can't even insert a razor between the space. They weren't, they were just put together with such precision. And he admitted, he said, we have no explanation. So there is a higher way of doing things. You don't need machines, you don't need mechanics. But unfortunately, we're on a platform now where everybody thinks that's the only way you can do things. So there is an ancient science, and from our tradition, we understand that it is centered on mantra, spiritual sound. Mantra has a spiritual effect, but it can also have a material effect, because with mantras going right you mentioned the Akash. The Akash is synonymous with prana. So mantra is traveling through the prana. And we have in our European tradition the idea of the magic word, abracadabra or something like that, and then something amazing. But that's not a myth. That's not just a fairy tale. It's a truth. And so we use mantras, but we use them for purification. The Brahmanas of India and the equivalent priesthood of all ancient civilizations, they used mantras, yes, for purification, but also for other things like constructing cities and things that modern scientists cannot understand.
Well, one thing that everybody can understand, the difference between the two of you is one comes from a Maasai tradition, one comes from an Indian tradition. Well, you don't eat meat, he does. Mm-hmm. Coming both from thousands and thousands of years of experience, how is that possible? This difference between you?
Well, I'll let him reply.
Baaba.
We come from various traditions, and the various traditions are based upon various levels of awareness and different needs according to that awareness. For example, no two animals have exactly the same diet because their body, their being has a different need, has a different way of functioning. We are human beings, both of us, but because of the cultural differences, because of the difference in consciousness and difference in awareness and the difference in the way we see the life and live the life, then our needs vary according to that. Like our dress is different, like our mantras might be different. Our diet also varies. We see diet as a part of everything that we take, not that the thing is disrespected or disregarded, that it is looked upon as less or inferior, but we look upon it as part of our own being that's not separate from our being. So when we take of it, we're taking of our own essence. We're taking of our own being. And it must be taken, however, with a great amount of respect and a great amount of reverence for it. Never disrespect. And so this allows us to create an energy that allows us to realize the motive and the purpose and the reason for which we do is not what we do or why we do or how we do, but the essence of doing and being one with what is done, being one with what is the product of what's the experience. This is to say, we become one with that which we take. That which we take is one with us.
Yeah, well, I would answer for myself why I'm a vegetarian, that I'm actually a Krishnatarian. Because a vegetable is, from the empirical point of view, a lump of matter. And everything, all matter, is connected with karma. So, because even in a vegetable, that is a living entity, that has a life. And even within the substance of the vegetable, there are many, many other microorganisms. They have their life too. And so even if one is a vegetarian, if he takes an apple or an orange or whatever, a potato, and just eats it, he's still responsible for taking life. Now, there can be an ethical discussion, well, at least the vegetable doesn't run away and scream. That's a discussion, but that's a relative consideration. So I'm a Krishnatarian, which means that before I eat anything, I offer it, or it should have been offered, to God. This is an ancient process called in Sanskrit yajna, sacrifice. And it translates very well into English because sacrifice in the English language comes from Latin sacrefacere, which means a sacred act, a holy act, or to make sacred. So it is taking food and making it sacred by a process of offering and a process of consciousness. We prepare our food in a consciousness, I'm not thinking when I cook that how good this is going to taste on my tongue. I'm thinking that the food or the taste in this food, again, rasa, there is a supreme taste, a supreme ultimate absolute bliss. And this is just a little manifestation of that. So I am going to first offer that taste back to the origin, and it will be sanctified in that way. And then I can take it. And so it just so happens in our Vaishnava tradition that Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam. He, in this verse, he requests, offer me leaf, fruit, flower, little water. This is vegetarian things. So in respect to his request, that's what we do. And that's why we're vegetarians. The whole ethical argument is, it can be made, about it's sattvic or it's preserving life, etc., etc. It can be made. But ultimately, that is of less importance to us. The ultimate thing is that this is our tradition, and God has requested those who follow this tradition to offer in this way, and that's what we do, and we realize something from it. And that's why we continue to do it. Now, there are other traditions, also under the umbrella of Vedic or Tantric. We would have a little disagreement because I don't differentiate between Vedic and Tantric. Because there is, for instance, a Vaishnava Tantra also. There is the Tantra of the Shaktas, Kali, but there's also Vaishnava Tantra. There are many kinds of Tantras. Well, anyway, but that's a technical thing. But in other traditions, under the umbrella of Veda or Tantra, however you want to put it, there are offerings made with animals. But then again, the idea is to cleanse that of, just as with vegetable, there is karma, or even you say papa, sin, associated with taking the life of a vegetable, the same with an animal. And so the process of offering cleanses the sin from that.
Taking food is taking part of creation. Baba, is creation God? Is enjoying creation, the good and the bad of it, is that enjoying God, or is God separate from that creation?
One of my brothers once said that God is a name we give our ignorance. And so anything that we don't understand or anything that we have a hard time applying to our everyday life, we call God. So it is God if we choose to make it a God, relatively speaking. But ultimately, it is just that it is. And whatever we eat, and for whatever purpose we eat it, then that purpose, that motive, and that reason becomes the nourishment for realization, the nourishment for self-realization. This physical body needs to be nourished. The physical plane needs to have tangible physical nourishment. Sacrifice is the basis of that. And so we can call it enjoyment, but the enjoyment is not the purpose for taking it. The enjoyment is not the purpose. We don't eat just because we enjoy it. Enjoyment is a side effect, you see. And so the purpose is sustenance. The purpose is to nourish that we may grow and that we may have a better capacity to understand and realize what this body is really about and what it is really meant to serve, instead of just our sense gratification, not just our enjoyment.
Yes, I would agree with that 100%, with just a little addition that, as I said, since the deity, Krishna, rasa, this ultimate bliss, has endowed foodstuffs with sukha, with its enjoyable taste. So one can enjoy that selfishly or selflessly. So our aim is to enjoy it selflessly. You see, understanding the origin of this bliss. And that is pure. That is pure. So this is because while understanding that there is sense gratification meaning that by enjoying myself selfishly, I become more and more attached to temporary things around me, thinking that they are the origin of my happiness, which is false, because they will pass away in time. You see, and then I will be in a great problem, because that which I thought was giving me pleasure, as it fades away, then I must suffer. Just like a man on his deathbed, he'll cry out for his wife, he'll cry out for his children, because they were the shelter of his joys, and now he's being separated from them, because that was the level of his understanding. So, but what this process of sacrifice does, it opens us to the unlimited ocean of rasa, which is always there, which is behind everything. You see, and so through something as simple as taking the remnants of an offering, taking what we call prasadam, mercy, the mercy of God, then one can, through that seemingly empirical experience of some sweet or salty or whatever taste it may be, one can actually enter into the ocean of rasa. That I would just add to what he said. Everything he said, I agree with.
In both of you, there's a certain denial of the realities of life. Let's start with money. Things in life that most people want, possessions, lust, sex, things like that. Baaba, how do you see that? Is that?
In the tradition or the way that I follow, there is no denial, there is an embracement. But it is not that we should embrace these things, as my brother has pointed out, selfishly. It must be a selfless embracement. And so you don't live for the embracement. You don't live for the money. You don't live for the sexuality or the sensuality. It is just a part of your physical reality. And that part of physical reality is not ultimately separate from a spiritual reality. So for us, especially in the tantric tradition, because we see the balance and the unity of all things, we don't see that it's wrong to embrace sex or to embrace the acquiring of money or the acquiring of wealth and prosperity or anything, as long as your motive, your purpose, and your reason is not the embracement. You see, if you live for it, if you live because of it, then that becomes the problem. Sex in itself is not a problem. You see, money in and of itself is not a problem. But when it's used for selfish motives, when it's used selfishly, and that selfish use becomes greed and lust, then that becomes a problem. When sex is used in a way that it becomes lustful, and it becomes a basis by which one is distracted from the spiritual motive and purpose and reason, the spiritual essence of life, and only sees that the sense gratification, what you feel, what you hear, smell, taste, and feel is the reality of life, then that becomes the problem. And the greater aspect of that to be seen in the world is that most people are not knowing the difference. You see, they live according to sense gratification. They're not seeing the difference. And so this is why we dress in certain ways. This is why we eat in certain ways. This is why we live in certain ways, is because all of that creates energy and allows the consciousness to be in touch with the true spiritual or higher motive, purpose, and reason for being. Because the vibration is there, the consciousness is there, the reality is easily perceived in our own being and not in some other being, supreme, superior, or inferior, but within one's inner self. And as we become a mirror of that, as we become able to better express that due to our own growth, our own spiritual development, then we